Hey guys, what's up? RascalRyan521 back with part 5 of my top 50 favorite movies of all time. Of course, in this one we'll be going over movies number 10 through 1. This is the final part. I'm sure this is the one that, if any of you are actually still watching these, I'm sure this is the one you've all been waiting for. This video could get a little long, because obviously it's my top 10. I'm going to want to get in depth. I want to explain my choices, you know, why I put what where. And without further ado, let's waste no time. Let's get right into the top 10. At number 10, we have Evil Dead 2: Dead by Dawn. Now, this is personally one of the most influential movies for me. Because this movie, what it does extremely well is it takes it, similar to what I said about Reservoir Dogs, it takes its low budget and it uses that as a strength, not as a hindrance. It uses it as a strength. And I really love the fact that they were able to, you know, create such a funny movie. Using a budget of only like $3 million or something like that, because this movie has for sure gone down as one of the funniest, one of the best horror comedies ever made. My personal favorite horror comedy ever made. Like I said, what it does really well is it has the effects in it, the acting and everything about it just seems so low budget. It seems like a B movie, but it pulls it off and it makes it work. You know, Bruce Campbell, sorry, I almost said Bruce Willis for a sec there. Bruce Campbell returns as Ash Williams, and he knocks it out of the park yet again, like he did with the original Evil Dead. Of course, him being the standout character of that movie, you have to bring him back for this one. He also does a great job in Army of Darkness, and even Ash vs. Evil Dead, one of my personal favorite shows on TV right now. So he's definitely his role of a lifetime for sure. But he comes back for this one, and the scenarios in this one are crazier and more fun and funnier than ever. And it's, like I said, this movie, what it does extremely well, and I can't stress this enough, it's a perfect blend of horror and comedy, and it does it better than, I personally think, Shaun of the Dead or Zombieland or any other horror comedy out there, What We Do in the Shadows. It does it better than any of those other ones do, just because the humor in this movie is so, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just so, like, wacky and silly, and it's much more like physical comedy than, like, intelligent comedy, but it works really well. Like I said, the effects for, you know, a low-budget movie are fantastic. You know, they're cheesy, but that's what makes them so great. The Evil Dead universe has always had cheesy effects, and it's, like I said, it's really influential to me because it's such a low-budget movie, yet it's gained this huge cult status, and it's such a just great movie underneath, you know, this really cheesy, simple plot. And I love the fact that they took this low budget and they used it as a strength to make a movie that's not too serious, but also not too funny either. It's a great balance of the two genres, and like I said, it cracks me up every single time I watch it, and I think it's personally one of the most innovative horror movies ever made, and one of the most influential movies personally for me. So, hail to the king, baby. At number 9, we have Drive. Now, this movie, it's funny that this is actually in my top 10, because I only saw this movie for the first time about a year ago. It was August 2016, and I watched it because I remember one of my favorite YouTubers, Chris Stuckman, was praising it so much. You know, he mentioned it a lot in his videos, and he mentioned how much how influential and inspirational it was, and I was like, okay, sounds like this is a pretty good movie, I better check it out. And I watched it, and my god, guys, I was blown away. The filmmaking alone in this movie is fantastic. It's spectacular. Nicholas Winding Refn, who is the director of this movie, it has got to be one of the most creative people I've ever seen. Like one of the most creative directors, what I meant to say, I've ever seen. His movies are just so full of, you know, wonder and just, they're so eerie, and something about his directing is just so inspirational to me. You know, he takes these really long pauses. He'll go long times without any dialogue being spoken, and he uses visual storytelling very well. And Drive, I feel like, is his masterpiece. This stars, of course, Ryan Gosling as the driver. And basically what he's doing is he's trying to help out this woman that he kind of grows to have like a relationship with, his neighbor. And he's also trying to balance that with his life as like a stunt car driver. And basically he's trying to help this woman out by helping her husband pull off this bank job, so these people that are threatening her family will leave them alone. And the bank job is a setup, or not a bank job, a pawn shop job, sorry. And it's a setup, and everything goes wrong, and now the driver's caught in the middle of this whole scenario. It's got some great supporting actors like Carey Mulligan, Ron Perlman, Albert Brooks, Bryan Cranston. But this movie, even though the acting is phenomenal and the dialogue is great, the real strength of this movie, guys, is just the filmmaking, the cinematography, the score by Cliff Martinez is fantastic. He's one of my new favorite movie composers now. After hearing, this and his soundtrack for, like, Only God Forgives and The Neon Demon, he just creates this really eerie tone that it's unsettling, it's blood-curdling, but he makes these really cool, ominous tones that fit so well with Refn's movies. Like I said, the cinematography is great. The whole skyline, like with the scenes where it'll show LA, the skyline, everything. The lighting of the nighttime scenes. The soundtrack, not talking about Cliff Martinez's score, but the soundtrack. A Real Hero, Night Call, Under Your Spell. One of my favorite film soundtracks of all time. And like I said, as far as filmmaking goes, it's this. If we're basing these movies on their quality of filmmaking and how well done the movie was, this would probably be in my top 3, because this movie is just made so extraordinarily well. And I think this movie was the first time I really ever considered filmmaking as this really is an art form. This is something I'm really interested in. This movie belongs in my top 10 alone just because it influenced me, it impacted me so much. I've seen the movie, I think, 4 or 5 times now, and every single time I watch it, I catch something new, I pick up a new technique that Refn uses, and I learn more about filmmaking every single time I watch this movie. It's educational in that regard, that it teaches you and it helps you learn about how to make a fantastic movie. And this movie got mixed reviews. A lot of people expected some sort of transporter action movie. This movie is more about the character building, the slow build up to these really tense scenes that eventually pay off in a really gory fashion in some cases. And like I said, the filmmaking alone in this movie is worth a watch, because this movie is made so beautifully, and it's one of the most impactful movies I've ever seen, and it's going to stay with me for years to come. At number 8, we have Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Now, I personally believe this is the best of the Indiana Jones quadrilogy, I guess you could call it now, considering there's 4 now. This one, I feel does everything right. I think this one has a fantastic... all the Indiana Jones movies do a lot of things right. The action... When you go into an Indiana Jones movie, the action's going to be amazing. The soundtrack by John Williams is going to totally pump you up and get you right back into those Indiana Jones feels. Everything, the cinematography and the directing is going to be great, but, Steven Spielberg. But what I think this one does really well is I think the chemistry between Harrison Ford and Sean Connery is what just gives this one the extra oomph. This one is really what pumps this one up above the other ones. My ranking of the Indiana Jones movies is actually a bit odd. I put The Last Crusade first, then Temple of Doom, then Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I think everybody puts Kingdom of the Crystal Skull at the bottom, of course, which it isn't a bad movie. I don't think it's nearly as bad as people say it is, but it's definitely not great. I give all the... when it comes to the way I rated them on IMDb, I give all the other ones a 9 out of 10, and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull I gave a 7 out of 10. So it's not terrible, but it's not great, and it's definitely nowhere near as good as the original 3. But yeah, like I said, Temple of Doom was a really close choice between this and The Last Crusade. Something about Temple of Doom is just so unique to me. It's just a really cool... I like the darkness of it. I guess it's just me. But Last Crusade, I think, is a really well-made movie. I think it's probably the best movie of the 3. So like I said, not just because of the chemistry between Sean Connery and Harrison Ford, but I think the storytelling in this one probably exceeds the other 2 as well. I think a lot of the riddles in this one, or the riddles and the whole final scene, the challenges of God or whatever they were called to get to the cup, the Holy Grail. I was actually struggling to remember what it was called for a sec there. But I think all the challenges are great, and they're some of the tensest moments in the entire Indiana Jones franchise. The tank fight is iconic, of course. The Venice boat canal chase is amazing. The whole X marks the spot thing with the library at the beginning. Of all the Indiana Jones movies, this is my personal favorite. and I think it honestly is. Oh, and then how can I not mention the young Indy scene at the beginning? One of the best intros of any movie ever. The whole, young Indy, what is it, the cross of Coronado that they're chasing after. Just a really fun, cool action sequence, especially the parts with the train and everything. But yeah, like I said, guys, one of my favorite action movies of all time. I've always been a huge fan of the Indiana Jones movies, and this one stands out above the rest, definitely, because it's one of the most fun action movies I think I've ever seen. So definitely check it out if you haven't. And at number 7, we reach what I believe is my favorite superhero movie of all time, and it's Spider-Man 2. The reason I put this above The Dark Knight, I know I'm going to get hate for that, I know I am. But like I said, I think Spider-Man, I think The Dark Knight is probably a better movie. But if I'm ranking them by my enjoyment of them, Spider-Man 2 just has to go higher. Because this is one of the funnest movies ever made. Personally, like I said, I think it's the greatest superhero movie ever made. It, without a doubt, tops anything the MCU's done. Spider-Man Homecoming was really good, but it's got nothing, absolutely nothing on Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2 did that thing where, did the perfect balance of, it not only is it a great action movie with superheroes and cool fight scenes, but it respects its characters as well, and it takes time to develop them, and it goes in depth with Peter Parker's struggle and his internal conflict, and it does it so well. Especially the way it pays homage to the comics. I'm not a comic fan myself, but I have seen that really famous panel of the spider suit, laying in the garbage can. The panel that they recreated shot for shot in this movie. Like I said, the acting in this one is as good as you can get for a Spider-Man movie. Alfred Molina is just absolutely flawless as Doc Ock. He's one of my favorite roles of all time. J. Jonah Jameson, of course, being played by J.K. Simmons, is fantastic. Tobey Maguire is still the ultimate Spider-Man, if you ask me, even though I think Tom Holland is doing a great job, and Andrew Garfield did a good job. I think Tobey Maguire, and like I said, this could just be my nostalgia talking, guys. If you guys grew up with The Amazing Spider-Man and that's your favorite, I totally get that. But Spider-Man 2, I think I probably watched this movie more than any other movie when I was a kid. It was like Spider-Man 2, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Revenge of the Sith, and the Indiana Jones movies are probably the ones that those are my movies as a kid. Those are the movies that I watched hundreds of times. Spider-Man 2 probably being the main one out of all of those. I watched this movie so many times, I can't even tell you. But looking back on it, it's not only just a great movie because of nostalgia purposes. This is a fantastic, not only superhero movie, but a character drama too. It really gets in detail with Peter Parker's life and his struggle with, maintaining his relationship and, being Spider-Man. And there's so many amazing sequences in this movie. The whole Peter Parker and Uncle Ben scene in the car, "I'm Spider-Man, no more," is one of, I think, the most touching scenes in any movie I've ever seen, especially in a superhero movie. The train scene might actually be my favorite action sequence of all time. I'm not even lying. I think it actually is, now that I think about it. So many just iconic scenes in this one, guys. My favorite Spider-Man movie to date, and I don't know if that's ever going to change, because this movie nailed what I think is the best superhero character ever, flawlessly. At number 6, we have Jurassic Park. Another movie that I probably should have mentioned in my last pick when I was rattling through all the movies I watched a bunch of times as a kid. But this movie, like I said, not only is it on here because, it's a dinosaur movie, it's got dinosaurs and action, and, a lawyer gets eaten off a toilet, and that's awesome. This movie's on here just because it takes me back to my childhood. The sheer enjoyment of it, and the way it evokes these little kid emotions in you. You see the dinosaurs and you hear John Williams' score, which this is personally my favorite movie theme song of all time, the Jurassic Park theme. And it takes you, or at least for me anyway, it takes me right back to my childhood. It makes me happy. I've honestly almost teared up just watching the Welcome to Jurassic Park scene. Almost every time I watch it, I get the biggest smile on my face, and sometimes I even tear up because it just reminds me so much of watching this movie as a kid. And it's still got that magic, even though it was made over 20 years ago. It's one of the most breathtaking movies I've ever seen, not only from a effects standpoint, but just from a movie-making standpoint in general. The acting, of course, is really good. Laura Dern, Sam Neill, everybody, Richard Attenborough, rest in peace. He was amazing as Dr. Hammond. And what else can I say, guys? It's Jurassic Park. Jeff Goldblum. I almost didn't mention Jeff Goldblum. One of the coolest movie characters of all time, Ian Malcolm. And it's one of those movies where it's like, it takes like almost an hour for you to see the dinosaurs, but everything else leading up to it is just, at least for me, I was riveted, because it's just so entertaining, seeing these characters, go back and forth and talking, and discussing, like Jeff Goldblum's whole speech about, they were so concerned about if they could, they didn't stop to think, whether or not they should, and they raised some really good questions about, like, life and humanity in this one. And it's been a while since I've watched the sequels, with the exception of Jurassic World. So maybe I'll have to go back and rewatch them and see if they're any good. But Jurassic Park, I don't know if they'll be able to recapture the magic that this one had, because this is one of my, in terms of like just action. In terms of like just action movies, Jurassic Park I think is flawless in every way, and it's not even just an action movie. It's so much more than that, which is why I think it's definitely worth watching. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen it, but the filmmaking in this one too, like I said, the effects, the score, everything about it, it takes me back to my childhood more than any other movie can and will. At number 5 we have Fight Club. Now, what is there to say about Fight Club, guys? This, in my opinion, is David Fincher's masterpiece. I'm no expert on Fincher. I've only seen about 4 of his films. He's made like 10 movies. So I'm no expert on him. But of the ones I've seen, none of them have come close to beating Fight Club. And I don't know if any of his other ones that I haven't seen will. Because this movie is told so well. It gives you so many hints throughout that hint towards the big surprise ending, which I won't spoil here, because it really is something that just leaves your jaw on the floor when you first hear it, and then you start piecing it together as when you rewatch the movie. That's why the rewatch factor for this movie is so fun, because you get to piece all these little things together. I feel like this is one of those movies where it gets better the more you watch it. But aside from the amazing storytelling, the acting is flawless, especially Brad Pitt and Edward Norton. I think Edward Norton is probably one of the best actors working today, without a doubt, for sure. With this and Birdman and Primal Fear, American History X, he picks some great roles, I'll say that. And like the stylistic choices that Fincher makes, some of the way that it's told, like through narration, and some of the scenes like where like all the price tags show up when it's like panning over the narrator's apartment, just some stylistic choices like that just make this a really unique movie too. A movie unlike any other I've ever seen, or I had seen it up until this time. And it's really it's one of those movies you just have to see it. You'll hear all these things about how Fight Club is so, you gotta watch this movie. It's, it's incredible. And it's like you hear so many things about it and you think, what's the big deal with it? You gotta watch it, really. Because like I said, the way that the story unfolds is really what makes this movie something to stand out. And the whole final scene, and the scene with the buildings and the explosions and everything, I won't get into what the context of it all is in case you haven't seen the movie. But the entire final scene and the line, "You met me at a very strange time in my life," it's one of my favorite movie endings of all time, with Where's My Mind playing. It's just fantastic. It's funny. It's really darkly funny. But it's one of the most interesting movies I've ever seen, for sure. It's very, very unique in its own special way. And number 4, guys, we have Back to the Future. Now, how is this just not one of the funnest movies ever? It's a great comedy. It's a great fun adventure movie. It's the defining movie of the 80s, if you ask me. And I suppose in my opinion doesn't mean jack squat, because I wasn't even alive in the 80s. But if as a person who's seen a lot of the more famous movies of the 80s, I think this one is without a doubt the best. Ghostbusters was a close second, but this one is, like I said, the defining movie of the 80s. This one perfectly captures the whole fun innocence of just, 80s teen movies, I think. But not only that, it's a great story, too. The whole, concept of going back in time and going to school with, your parents, and the whole, it's a really fun movie. It's like that. I think it's what I love the most. The reason that this movie and Indiana Jones both ranked so high on this list is because they're just so much fun. You know, movies like I said earlier, There Will Be Blood. Maybe that movie should be in the top 10. It probably should if I'm ranking them on quality. But if I'm ranking them on enjoyment, there's a reason why Indiana Jones and Back to the Future and Spider-Man, there's a reason why those are all in the top 10, because they're just so much fun for me to watch. And that's really what movies are all about. You know, I love a good drama or sad movie, but at the same time, I'm never gonna get the same enjoyment watching a movie like that I will watching a movie like Back to the Future, because it's just such a fun movie to watch, you know, after, like, say, you had a bad day or something. Back to the Future is the perfect movie to watch, because it's just, I don't know, it just takes me back to, like, a time where, you know, movies could just be fun, you know, and I just love that. I love the whole thing, you know, what this movie, just the directing of it, of course, Robert Zemeckis, you know, he made sure to make, like, the wackiest movie possible. The score in it is great, the Back to the Future theme is fantastic, the clock tower scene is one of the tensest moments in film history, without a doubt, no doubt about it, one of my favorite movie scenes of all time. Especially when Doc plugs it in right at the right moment, the electricity shoots through the door and shoots back to 1985. It's all just flawless. It's perfect tension building, and the whole dance sequence is it's just one of my favorite scenes of all time. You know, Johnny Be Good and everything. But yeah, I can't tell you enough, guys, how much I love this movie, just for how fun it is. I've used that word a bunch of times in this, just talking about this movie, but it really is just such a great, fun family movie, and I just love it so much. It's so great. At number 3, guys, we have Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. Now, what is there to say about Empire Strikes Back other than the fact that it is, without a doubt, the best Star Wars movie? I think a lot of people generally accept that. There's some people that, you know, will say, like, A New Hope is the best, or some people even like the prequels and will say, like, Revenge of the Sith is the best. I totally understand your opinion. Whatever you guys think is the best one. You know, everybody's open to their own opinion. Empire Strikes Back, though, for me, like a lot of people, is the best of them, because this movie, it takes what made the first one so great, you know, the great characters, the fantastic world, and, you know, the world building of it and everything, the amazing effects, the magic and the fantasy of it. It took all those things and it added on to them. It gave the characters layers. It gave us a story where the good guys don't ride off into the sunset in the end. It gave us a bleak ending that really leaves us wanting more, and really kind of leaves you in awe that a movie that as fun as Star Wars would have a sequel that goes so dark, or as dark as this one goes. And for all those reasons alone, it's a fantastic movie, but there's so many other reasons. I mean, the fight scenes are even better in this one. The Battle of Hoth and the lightsaber duel between Luke and Vader is my favorite lightsaber duel in the entire saga, without a doubt. All the scenes of Luke training on Dagobah with Yoda being one of the best movie characters, with some of the best quotes ever. It's, like I said, guys, Star Wars is such an impactful series, and I really think that this one is its shining moment. So yeah, in closing, guys, this movie takes everything that Star Wars did fantastically and adds upon it, and makes it one of the best sci-fi movies ever made, the best sci-fi movie ever made, in my opinion. And it sets up perfectly for a great sequel that concluded one of the greatest trilogies in cinematic history. At number 2, guys, we have Pulp Fiction, the 5th of 5 Tarantino movies you will see on this list. The last one, my all-time favorite Tarantino movie, at the number 2 spot. Pulp Fiction, guys, I wish I could shock you and say Pulp Fiction is my second favorite Tarantino movie, but this one is my favorite. Or Pulp Fiction is my 5th favorite Tarantino movie, but this one is my favorite. Pulp Fiction, the beauty of this movie is I can't even describe why I love it so much. I don't know if it's like I said, this movie, the acting is great. You know, Samuel L. Jackson, John Travolta. Sorry, I was struggling with some of the actors' names here because I was... Anyway, Uma Thurman, Bruce Willis, Tim Roth. Everybody does a great job acting. The direction by Tarantino, the non-linear storytelling, the dialogue that really seemingly has nothing to do with the plot at all. The soundtrack that adds so much to these scenes. There's so many elements in this movie that come together yet I can't, that, make it a great movie, yet I can't quite explain why it's such a perfect movie, why I love it so much. And I think that's the beauty of this movie. There's so many things going for it that you can't pinpoint one thing that really makes it stand out the best. It's all these things coming together that really just make this movie an experience and not just a movie. All these elements come together and they create just this once-in-a-lifetime movie experience, and you watch it and you're just seeing like modern day. Roger Ebert even described it as a modern day Citizen Kane. I mean, it's insane just how incredible this movie is. And I know I'm just sounds like I'm repeating myself here, but really that's the reason I'm doing that is because I'm struggling to come up with anything to say about this movie, because like I said, I can't pinpoint a reason why I love it so much. It's just so many elements coming together that make it such a unique experience. And that's really what I love about Pulp Fiction, is it's such a unique experience. All the other Tarantino movies are fantastic, but I don't think any of them are nearly they don't reach the level that this movie reaches. They don't, this movie is such a thrill ride watching it, and I watch this movie every time, and I just think this is filmmaking genius. Everything about this movie is just flawless. I absolutely love it. Like I said, the soundtrack complements some of the scenes perfectly. Some of the scenes are extremely tense. The dialogue, I think this movie has the best written dialogue for any movie I've ever seen, without a doubt, especially the final diner scene. I know it sounds like this movie is overrated to death because so many people have praised it over the years, but I'm telling you guys, it is worth all that praise. I don't think I'll ever be able to explain what it is that I truly love about Pulp Fiction, or what makes it so special to me. All I can say is you have to watch it to truly experience it, because this movie isn't just a movie, it's an experience from start to finish. It's a 2.5 hour movie that feels like an hour and a half. It goes by way too quickly, and it's just, I watch it and I'm just in awe the entire time I'm watching it. It's truly flawless filmmaking, if ever there was such. And now the time has come, guys, for my number one pick. This movie is a movie that is planted so deeply inside of me. This movie, every time I just think of, the perfect movie, this always comes to mind. Everything about it works for me. This is one of the best adaptations I've ever seen from book to screen. The cinematography in it is perfect. The acting is perfect. The score is beyond perfect. The effects and the effects and the CGI and everything still hold up today. I honestly can't find a single thing wrong with this movie. I think it's perfect in every single way, and I love it so much. And of course, if you guys know this channel, you probably already know what I'm talking about. It is The Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King. I'm gonna kind of it's gonna sound like I'm stealing from Jeremy Jahns here, because he said the same thing. He said the Lord of the Rings trilogy is his favorite movie of all time, and I do kind of agree with him there. Even though I say Return of the King, I think the trilogy as a whole should count as one movie, and if it does, then I do consider it my favorite movie of all time. But just to be more specific, I'm just gonna choose the Return of the King, because even though I think all the movies are flawless in every single way, I'm just choosing this one because I think it. Not only is it flawless in every way, but it has some of my favorite scenes in film history. Whether it's Sam carrying Frodo up Mount Doom, I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you. Whether it's the scene where they're right on the precipice and Frodo just has the ring in his hand and you hear all the whispers in his head, the ring is mine, it's so extremely tense, the scenes at the Black Gate with, Aragorn for Frodo. So many just iconic moments. They translated these books absolutely perfectly to film. I feel like they actually even improved. It's one of the rare instances where I think they improved upon the books by making movies out of them. And it's really a shame that The Hobbit had to be stretched out into a trilogy when it would have done fine as just one movie. Because it could have been truly as great as Lord of the Rings had they just focused up and made it just one great movie that stays true to the source material. It could have been a fantastic movie. Alas, it was just alright. It was nothing special. But that doesn't detract from the fact that The Lord of the Rings, in my opinion, is the perfect movie. Everything about it is just flawless. And it's a 10 out of 10 if there was one, for sure. But like I said, the score for it is just beautiful, and the scope of it, and the effects and the landscape of it is just all breathtaking. The acting, especially by Viggo Mortensen as Aragorn, who I think is the standout performance of this trilogy, is perfect. And like I said, guys, I can't praise it enough. The Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King, I think, is a cinematic masterpiece. It's the greatest movie ever made, in my opinion, and I just love it. It's flawless. I cannot get enough of it. I've only seen these movies 3 times because the trilogy is just like so long. It takes forever to get through them all. But every time I watch them, I'm just reminded why I love movies so much, and these movies are the quintessential reason why. Thank you guys so much for watching this 5-part series. I really appreciate it. It really means a lot to me because I care more about videos like this than I do pretty much any of my LEGO videos, with the exception of like my painted figure showcases. Most of those LEGO videos, I really don't care that much if you guys watch them, but movies like this, I really appreciate it when I get viewers on these, because these are the videos that I really love making and I truly want people to see. And I really hope that you guys enjoyed this list. I hope you enjoyed sitting here listening to me talk for however many hours this entire series was. Probably a good like 2.5 hours, I imagine. But like I said, I really appreciate it, guys. You are the best subscribers ever. If you stuck through with me for this entire 5-part series, I will see you in the next video. And until next time, peace out, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.